Hello, everyone, and welcome to the, what day is it? November 29th Product Analytics Sync. Would anyone like to review the build board? What year is it also? Yeah. Cool. Then I will go ahead and fire up the board, and then we can take a look at what we've got here. Max, you've created a number of different issues here. You want to cover these really quickly? Or actually, I've created one of those, but yeah.
Yeah, one of them was created like 10 minutes ago. But first one is investigation of pre-aggregation in anonymized user ID. So that's me trying to actually understand what pre-aggregation is in Cube. The TLDR is database views, which is great and cool, and will speed up complex queries that we're grouping by individual users. Will hopefully lead us on to the second issue, which is figuring out user session analytics. So that's cool. I've been messing around with various Ruby scripts this morning and now have a just about stable ClickHouse installation with a couple of million records, which makes like testing this stuff a bit more interesting. So yeah, that's what I've been working on, and that's both of those issues.
Awesome. Yeah, like you mentioned, I just created that one less than 10 minutes ago. Just pointing out the work that we'll need to do to actually connect event data to sessions and then defining what is a session. I've linked to Cube's documentation there, which basically takes apart segments analytics SDK and defines it as any inactivity period of over 30 minutes between user actions. And so basically we'll want to use that to define how we want to define sessions. But yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll discuss that in detail in an hour and a half time for anyone else who wants to join the calendar invites on the shared invite.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. Then we have the issue for the track usage with new tracker on the internal handbook. This is not showing us, oh no, this is still workflow blocked. Tim, I don't know if this is a good idea to just jump to your point in the agenda topic already, or do you want to just wait until later after we finish the board review?
Finish the board review and then we can jump to that later.
Okay,
I would say.
Sounds good. Then we have a number of onboarding issues. I think that's believed to be waiting on the view app creation, so nothing being done there since they're blocked. Cool. Anything with the issue that is assigned to you in the blocked column, Rob?
No.
Okay.
I think that can actually be unassigned for me now. It was assigned to me because I needed to fill it out, and then I forgot to unassign myself.
All righty. Cool. Then we're ready for development. It still shows it's blocked, but dashboard list of dashboards. Is this actually ready for development, or is it actually still blocked? Is that what that issue means? Or am I about to open up a confidential one?
It's not confidential. I'm trying to remember why it's blocked.
It's blocked by add button to go back.
No, is blocked. That's blocking, not is blocked by.
Okay.
Is blocked by create onboarding viewer. Is it blocked by that?
Is it blocked though?
No, that's what I'm thinking.
The GraphQL endpoint, right?
It's not. Yeah, okay. It's not blocked. It's got nothing to do with onboarding. It's the separate app. So no, this isn't blocked.
Excellent.
This is why it was half in, half out.
There we go. All right, then we've clarified that. And that's available for someone to pick up once that's ready. I can't scroll. There we go. And all right, we have in dev. Axel, you've got the single stack cube query rendering widget.
Yeah, I'm looking forward getting reviews on that today. So yeah, and thank you, Ian and Rob, for the groundwork there. And yeah, not much to tell that. And also looking forward to jump into the onboarding issues afterwards.
Very cool. And then Jan, you've got the table.
Yeah, so I just started with that. Most of my day was spent on reviews and yesterday on fixing my GTK, so I haven't made much progress there, but hopefully next week I'll be able to give a nice demo of what I've built.
Awesome. As far as the stack integration with staging and production, I haven't received, well, I haven't checked my pings today, but I haven't received a ton of responses on my latest very long form clarification of all the things going on. So I think that's also a good lead into the eventual number 9 topic in the agenda. So I'll just save that for the discussion there in terms of how we can move a little quicker on this. But
Are we
until then,
waiting for infrastructure on this, or is this the ball in our court?
it's balls in both courts. There's things I need to respond to in the production readiness review, but there are questions I have in terms of what they need and what is actually like blocking for us to get the internal handbook going that they haven't yet responded to, at least as of me checking last night. So it's a little bit of ping pong with multiple balls, I guess, on the table, if that makes sense. Yeah, so we'll get into that, because I think especially where we're at in the season and the quarter, and generally speaking, we can't speed this up. And it's not. We'll get into it later in the agenda.
All right, I'll pause until we get to topic 9 then.
Okay, cool. We've got creating the onboarding view app. Rob?
Yep, it's in review. Jan's done an great initial review on that. Took me a little while just because feature specs were not working for me, and my GDK broke this morning. Fun times.
Lovely.
So yeah, I need to respond to his initial feedback, and then I want to make sure that I get it out to an external maintainer just to make sure that the architecture makes sense on a more than just our group level. We should be hopefully dealt with by it should be completed by the end of the week, if not then tomorrow or the day after. Sounds good. That'll unblock a lot of issues there, and we can move forward with the onboarding. So that's awesome. As far as closed issues, our last bookmark was separation of dashboard and widgets in separate files. So that means we have about 7 newly closed issues, which is great to see. Max, you have a couple of these. Anything you want to cover? Nothing huge. I think I've covered most of them in the Slack group, to be honest, but now we can create product analytics stacks via GraphQL APIs. We're exposing the Jitsi key in the public API, and yeah, that's about it. Oh, why is that one closed? That one got promoted to an epic, I believe.
Right, okay, fine. Yeah. There's nothing there. And then a bit of a refactor for making sure that the dashboards only appear if product analytics is set up correctly. Awesome. And then we have the follow-up for documentation and admin settings completed by Axel. Anything you want to add here?
Yeah, so we added a new section on the documentation, and we also went through a few suggestions from our technical writer. And we also have a follow-up to add more information regarding the stack we are using on the documentation as well. Hopefully I can contribute to this milestone as well. So yeah, it was good progress, and also we have a couple of follow-ups.
Very cool. And then last but definitely not least, we've got the line chart rendering widget here. You want anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I demoed that last week, so I don't think it's necessary to say too much or demo it again. But yeah, it was kind of like, sorry that it took so long, but it was kind of like the gift that kept on giving at the end. There was also like a bunch of merge conflicts that popped in and random weirdness with the dependencies. But yeah, it's finally merged.
No need to apologize. It's part of the fun here. So cool. All right. I think that wraps up the board review then, unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add. I have a couple of read-only items that people can check out. Tim, your point about the separate infrastructure.com update.
Yes, that was a part as the whole infrastructure review is taking longer and longer. My idea was if we would have everything already to activate the tracking, to write into the tracker and basically gather already data, so that we basically separate the connecting to .com, which the main part is of the production readiness review, and the part of activating the tracker. Would that make sense? Would that be possible?
I mean, theoretically, all we need to do is send the app ID to or create a new table, and then I guess we can really just use like any instance and set up the table, and then connect the internal handbook to our existing analytics stack. So that's part of like how we can expedite us getting the internal handbook tracker going. So I think we can separate that out, in my opinion. I would ultimately like to have the production integration done and have it set up correctly, but it's
not exactly blocking us getting this internal tracker or getting the instrumentation set up on the internal handbook. Does anyone have any thoughts on that besides Timothy?
I like the idea of separating the two, because once we start getting data being sent from all of the users of the internal handbook beyond just our set of people that opted in to run the extension, I mean, that's going to give us a ton of value in terms of getting a more rich data set to start working and doing modeling on top of. It also helps us show progress to the org around, hey, look at all the great stuff product analytics group is doing. Our next step is completing this infrastructure piece to get it integrated properly. But I think since we're already having our small group of people using the tracker on their local machines, that shows that we can make some progress by having it deployed in the actual handbook itself, even if the infrastructure piece is not yet completed. Like those two blocking each other to me necessarily.
Yeah, it just depends on how you want to like figure out like if we're well, it doesn't matter. I'm okay with separating it out. So as far as action items, what I will do is yeah, I'll just set up a table in a new key in the cluster itself, and then we can update that merge request, and then we can start collecting data there. And then in the meantime, I'll still continue to play ping pong with the infrastructure review. Does that sound good with everyone?
So just to be clear, we don't need final approval from infrastructure to start collecting production level data through the internal handbook.
It's yellow data. The issue in the infrastructure review is specifically with making changes to GitLab.com, production.com itself. And we already have the legal approval to collect data on the internal handbook. So if we're basically, what I'm probably going to do is just set up a GitLab instance in the cluster itself, or like in our shared sandbox environment, connect that, rename the table to match the ID, and use that app ID to collect data for the internal handbook. So we're not touching .com at all. Ideally, I'd want to get it set up in .com. To me, that's the right way to do it. But given how things are, how long things are taking, and if they're important questions they're asking, so I'm not discounting, excuse me, the conversations that are happening with the infrastructure review. But that at least gets us to the data point, which you could argue we could have done that weeks ago, but we were trying to do it like completely properly. But at this point, I don't think I don't believe there's an issue doing it this way, because we're not touching .com at all right now.
Okay, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's just where we wanted it, because the project actually lives on .com, right? Like in reality, especially when we have the dashboard set up, and that's why we're still going to work towards it, is that we can then actually pull the dashboards up on the internal handbook as we build them, but we're still not even there yet. So like, I think that's okay for us to do this now.
Because we don't have a specific time when the infrastructure stuff would be completed, right? It's not like we're waiting for someone to push a button and it'll be done in a day. It's an open question on how much longer we'll have to do things with them, right?
Correct. I've asked in the change request issue in a long comment at the bottom, like what of these questions are actually blocking for us to get to the internal handbook step, because it's been clarifying like, yes, these are things that we need to get sorted out when we go out to full production, but we're not there yet. And we're doing this experiment, this internal preview. But it hasn't been made clear to me from infrastructure, like what do they need for that specific step of just connecting to this internal only stack, which has minimal like blast radius and things like that. So, yeah.
I mean, what I can do is that I simply push again from my side today to get an answer on this. And I know last week was special, but that we get at least an ETA. I mean, if they give an ETA, yeah, we can do this in the next 2 days, then rather do this. And it's more of is the ETA 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out? Yeah, then I would go with let's track if it's just a couple of days left. And I think this would be anyhow good to know. I'm happy to write a comment just of like, someone please give me an ETA. Maybe that helps.
Yeah, I will link oh gosh, this comment's so long. I will link the comment.
I see it. It's the
yeah.
For Jarvis 5 days ago. So
yeah. So granted, it's the holiday season, blah blah blah. But at the very end, I put a line break just to kind of like say like, hey, what else do we need? So if you can just help boost that, I would appreciate that for sure. That said, there's still open questions that I have to answer on
actual readiness MR. But yeah, there's like 3 separate issues right now that I'm trying to field questions for. So yeah.
Let me see if I can do a bit of magic there.
Much appreciated. All right, then as far as the action item, then just to recap, I will set up a separate instance because we'll definitely need that at some point to review it. But then basically get the stack set up to accept events from the internal handbook. We'll update that merge request and start collecting data this week. Then I think. Cool. Just sharing kind of a work in progress thing. I started kind of cleaning up or reorganizing the dashboard epic as far as like what we want to define for the audience and behavior. There's not a whole lot there. So I see you all clicking there, and I just really relocated a bunch of the description from the epic. What I really need to spend some time on is thinking about the behavior dashboard, because the kind of what we're showing in the vision proof of concept, I don't know. We basically have to better define what we want out of these dashboards and what exactly we want to show on it. We're investigating things like sessions and then events and things like that. But, you know, on the same hand, where audience is showing browsers or resolutions or things like that, the behavior one doesn't, show as much in terms of like top events or things like that. So we just, the same thing we've been doing with everything else with onboarding. We just want to make sure we really define the scope and requirements there. That will probably require its own working session after sessions, but definitely open to any feedback in terms of things that you would expect to see from those dashboards with everyone's experience with that so far. But just wanted to highlight that. All right, then we're on to show and tell. Tim, another week. You're muted.
Sorry, I was typing, then I'm muting myself. Good. Let's see. What can I show you today? As it was Thanksgiving week, and I love Thanksgiving because there is so much quietness and you can get stuff done. So I was curious, as I'm always quite curious about things. Let me reload that thing or go from here. So that's our dashboard list as you know it. You can go into the overview. And I tried out what we already had in the POC. So we have now an edit button. So what we can do is we can resize them, we can take them, we can move them, and it's already creating the code behind it. So basically the dashboards that we are having currently as static ones, and we can also have a YAML converter on that part to basically give us then the YAML output. And if you combine those two, you can go ahead and say, okay, I want to have a new widget. You can say, I want to have page views. What do we want to see? We want to see browser families. And I also know browser families is super important. It's operating system.
It's great for a single stat.
See. There you go. Browser, user browsers. So that's my new widget. I can click add to dashboard, and simsalabim, as we say in German, we have the new widget added.
Very cool.
So we can now basically resize that one and add it over here. This is doing everything right now in memory, as we don't have an endpoint to save a specific widget. And then we would basically hand over just the ID of that new widget file, visualization file, to that dashboard to edit there. But basically, yeah, that works in that sense. So what happened during this week is also that I had my first 2 MRs out of this working MR that I used. Basically, I cut the first 2 MRs out. The backend is already merged. Thanks, Max, for the help there. So this is adding currently the new proxy calls for the Cube dry run endpoint and the Cube meta endpoint. So this gives us all the endpoints that are actually available from Cube, and they make it available for the widget designer so that we know what we can query there. And we have also the setup for the widget designer itself as an MR that was also merged yesterday. And now with the line charts, so this is already a branch that is rebased from Jan's line chart and is using that one. And as soon as we have a data table, we can use that too. And as soon as I have a single stat, I will add that too. So my next topic will be really cutting the next MR of most probably already the first step of having these measure selectors with the selectors that are actually available, combined with the first dimension selectors, and simply creating. Currently the NA stands for we don't have data on this, and basically cut that out and create issues that we gather this data so that we can add it later, and maybe just leave out the filters. And also here in the widget designer, we also have like a code box where we can say, okay, I want to have this basically as the code, and we can then copy that and put this also into a JSON to save it already right now. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's really tempting to move forward with that stuff, because yeah, all those bits and pieces come into place now, and I can definitely see that we are pushing out, because everything else also works. The filters work now, the date range works, so we can create already more complex widgets even, and push that over to the dashboards, and yeah, find a way to save them. Then is, I believe, one of the bigger next steps. And as we are adding then more and more complexity, because in reality, what we need now here is, this is the data part, but what on the right side, I want to have like the options for a graph. So for the line chart, for example, that you are able to select which data is on the x-axis and what is on the y-axis and stuff like that. So this widget designer can go on, I believe, for the next 12 months to add functionality. But
it can get really crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, designing charting, that's a whole product in and of itself, right?
Yes.
Inside of the code option, will we already have options to define what's on the X or the Y axis or other graph parameter customization? Okay,
that's already produced here. So
okay, it's just about how do we get it in a visual editor form, but it will be available in the code form, right? Okay.
Exactly, because otherwise I figured out that the line chart doesn't even render anything if it doesn't have the options. So this is one of the next steps, that we really have the option to also figure out how the UX is working with having data on the left side and options on the right side and things like that. And also find a way that we can say, okay, a line chart has these types of options, so that we make this also configurable. Otherwise, we will end up with 100 different sub control thingies around the widget designer, which make it then super heavy to change anything. So I think this is really going a little bit into the whole no code land of having editors that are configurable. And yeah,
that'll be fun to navigate, because we'll want to make sure those patterns are established, especially when we get into like editing the dashboards in place as well. So we'll make sure we want to be consistent and not just add a raw controls for each little option. But it's exciting for sure. And as we're preparing the single stat in the table, and now we're looking into how we get all the data prepared in terms of like getting sessions available, and then eventually getting it into page areas, things like that, we'll definitely be able to start piecing everything together. So it's super exciting.
Are those questions within the scope of the dashboard design working group, or is that's a different set of topics they're working on?
The dashboard working group is specifically just around like naming and like the general like nomenclature around dashboards. At least that's its current goal. I would imagine it could potentially expand from that, but they haven't had, I think supposedly this week's supposed to be like the first meeting, but actually I'm not even sure when that's happening. Might already have happened, but their goal is a little bit more finely scoped for now, but I'm sure when they see our stuff that might change, because we're definitely in newer territory as far as GitLab is concerned, as far as dashboards go.
I think Rob, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was only going to say that for the controls for different charts and stuff, we can always use the power of our schema to define what options are available for each data source and line chart type, and then use that in the front end as a JSON schema to decide what's controls to show up.
Yeah, that's a good one, that we simply used it straight away.
we'll want to get some issues organized for that, because there's definitely a way where we can. The MVC is that, yeah, all the code's available to go from there, but then the controls themselves is like another layer on top of that. So a lot of issues to create.
But
Very cool.
I was also thinking about having a small helper script, so that right now we are creating those two JSON arrays, basically with the links to the JSONs in the static one. And maybe we simply create an import to a file that is then auto-generated from a directory and the subfolder, so that we simply have a script. We drop the JSONs, we edit the JSONs, we run the script, and it produces a new JS file with exactly those arrays, so that we don't need to mess around inside of the files if we are adding now then more and more dashboards. Because in reality, we can now, for our internal dashboards, we can start editing and creating them here. Simply hit code, take that code, put it in the JSON in the directory, and hit save from there. And then if we have a script, then it makes it also easier that they show up immediately again in the product. So that was also another thought, because that shouldn't be too hard to have like a util script.
Are you saying a script to help get us from the query designer to actually putting it back into the .GitLab directory? I'm just trying to understand what.
Yeah, exactly. So in the repo, we have this directories, visualizations, and GL_dashboards.
Mm-hmm.
And simply that we have a script that we simply drop a file in there. We run the script because we need in code currently references to those files to show up. That we can do that also because dynamic imports don't work. So
okay,
to make that easy.
Would we need to get into the merge request workflow to be able to do that though, or not?
Yeah, but we then simply can have merge requests that have simply those JSON files for the new dashboards. So there's basically just creating a new file and updating this index file, as I would call it. So we can have a walkthrough that I can show you.
As maybe an issue would help just to understand the goal there.
Yeah.
Because I'm perhaps missing the link between having JSON files in there versus having YAML in there. Because I understood YAML to kind of be the final format for it to exist in the dashboard directory.
But right now we have the hard-coded ones, the hard-coded dashboards for that we are delivering, and to basically update them in a more easy way, that we can simply go ahead and update them, have a util script that integrates them into the code until we have the full integration.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can.
I will create an issue.
Yeah, a walkthrough of that would be helpful for me. I think I'm following it, but I'm not completely positive.
Cool. All right. Thanks for the demo, Tim. Yeah, I think that's the end of the agenda. Did anyone have any other final topics, questions, or concerns?
I want to see Max's demo. You had the 1 million thing in.
Are you able to make the meeting at 4:30 your time? Just because I know we're at the end of our block now.
Yeah, we've got a working session where we'll demo that.
Perfect. I will try to get to come to that one.
Okay, we'll record it anyway.
So yeah, cool. Well, it's good to see everyone. Let me know if there's anything else you need. Otherwise, have a good rest of your week and take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Amy.
So